Hey there! In the past video, I showed you how you could join different channels and check in the web browser, in the WebSocket logs development tools, how you were receiving or you started receiving messages and sending messages to keep the connection alive. But now the question is how we can interact with those messages so we can parse them in our FlutterFlow environment or the editor to display a message or take an action or do different stuff. That's what matters, right? So that's what we are going to do in this video. What I'm going to build is a logic to tap this card in this list of channels to open this chat component that I have here. And then I will add a functionality to type a message here and send it. And then we will create the logic to render that message or listen to those messages and display them in here. So let's get started. First thing, remember that we have this list view that is connected, the data is connected to a page parameter which is called channels. Basically it's a list of strings, so each row is a string, right? Let me add the first logic here, and that logic will be opening the chat actually, and for that we're going to use the show bottom sheet. We're going to select our chat component, and in here we're going to pass the connection hash that is stored in our page state, and then we're going to pass the channel name, which is the current row where the card I'm tapping is living, right? Further changes, that's cool. We can enable drag and use save area for usability and better experience. So that will open the component, the chat component. Now, when I open this, I will want to start sending messages, right? So let's send add our first action to send messages or custom messages. And for that, we have to go to custom actions, select the Xano Realtime Data Library, and here we have our send WebSocket message action. This action requires that we pass the connection hash, which I don't know if you remember, we just set this, so we're passing to this component the connection hash and the channel name so we can connect it to the parameter itself. And the rest is stuff we have to configure ourselves. Okay, so first, the message. We have this data type, one Xano WebSocket message, which is the one we use to communicate to the library what message or type of message we want to send, but also is the class or data type we use to receive messages. So everything we send will be using this structure, and everything we receive will be parsed to this structure. So if you want to use your own data type, you will have to create some kind of custom function to parse from this data type to your own. I hope that it will make sense in shortly, so bear with me. So let's build this message actually. For this, FlutterFlow has this nice action, which is create, or function, which is create data type object, and here you can select the data type of your project or any libraries you have installed. In this case, you want to use Xano Realtime data type, tap it, and then select Xano WebSocket message. Here you have like a lot of properties you can set, but in a specific, or what we want to do is send an action of the type message, and also we want to tell it which channel we're sending this message to. So for this we are going to set it to the channel parameter or channel name parameter we're receiving from the component, and then what we would like to do is pass it the data, but actually we're not going to configure the data thing because this data type within this class is a string, and it will be tedious to build some kind of JSON object here and then parse it. So rather than using that field here, we're going to use this other parameter called payload data. This is basically, let me show you real quick actually, because it will be easier to show you in the editor. Give me 1 second. Okay, so here we are. Uh, we have here, let's actually look for one message. Here it is. Okay, so uh, this one. Okay, cool. So when we send a message, we're basically sending these three properties: action, which we already set as type of message, and the channel name within this options object or JSON object in this case, which the action maps automatically, so you don't have to do anything, just pass the channel name. And then we have the payload data, and here the payload data, it isn't the payload object as a wall, it's more like the path of payload dot data. So the only thing we have to pass here is this object, and this object could have any schema, any shape. So right now, for example, to keep our connection alive, we're sending this periodical message that's an object with a single property, which is the key message with a value of ping. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to send a message following our own pattern, and that pattern is fine here. So give me a second. Let me actually close this for a second. Let's go to data type. I created this data type in my project. This is not living in the library. This is living the project. I'm creating this application. And this is the pattern I want to follow. I want to pass a random ID or an ID, a message, which is the message we're typing into the text field, and then a sent at integer, which is actually a timestamp in milliseconds. So the ID, I said random ID because for now I'm not have configured any endpoint or anything to retrieve the authenticated user credentials, ID, etc. So in that scenario, you will pass that kind of that ID, the ID of the table in here, or some other identifier to recognize the user. But in this case, we're going to generate a random ID. So this is the field we will use to distinguish if I'm sending the message or someone else is sending the message. So let's set this properly. Let's go back to our components and open the actions tree, and let's start building the JSON. So we are going to say the key type is going to be string, but the value we are going to keep it as JSON or anything. Reason is because we are going to have a mix of a string and integer values. So if you set this to string, you will have troubles parsing this thing to parsing this to your own pattern. Okay, so let's add the first key value pair, and this is going to be ID. If I set a random ID here, which can be generated with a random string, the issue is that every time we send a message, it will generate a random string. So it will work. For now, we're going to leave it as it is, or actually let's remove it and let's go with the other twos. So the message is simpler because we have the text field already in place. I look for text field, type your message, and the timestamp actually is also simple because we can just set this to send at, and then I'm going to use current time, and with current time I'm going to use this conversion of that time to Unix timestamp, and I'm going to select milliseconds. I will suggest you milliseconds or not seconds because it could happen that in the same second or within the same time frame of 1 second just receive two messages, one that you sent and another person sent. Milliseconds will be more precise. So now let's set our ID. Actually, I have in this component a parameter called random ID. So let's set something for this at the moment of initialization of this component. I'm going to open the editor on initialization, and let's say the state, component state. And we're going to set the random ID set, and this is going to be a random string. Let's say it's a length minimum of 8 characters, 12 max, uppercase digits. Okay, cool. If you didn't see what I did just there, I just tapped on the component and then I added an action that is triggered by the initialization of the component itself. And here I updated the state of my component, and specific the property random ID. Okay, cool. So now we have a random ID on initialization, and let's go back to our object we're creating, and here we're going to add the key value pair ID, and let's connect it to the random ID in the component state. Cool. Now, as we join a channel, there is a chance that we receive an error message. So what we are going to do is that we are going to wait a short amount of time, let's say 200 milliseconds for that error message, and if we don't receive that error message, we will assume that the message was sent correctly. We have an output here that tells us if we managed to send the message or not. So let's call it message sent. Let's copy this. Let's add a conditional. Oh, my bad. Delete conditional. Yes, that's cool. And the condition will be based on the message sent output, which is a boolean already. And if it was sent, then let's reset the text field form, first one. And if it wasn't sent, so stamp out says message not sent, and then red color to identify the error. Okay, that is our error. Okay, cool. So with this setup, we are ready to go and start sending messages. So let's give it a try. Okay, so I have two tabs open, so I can see the connection between them. And let's open this private channel I just joined in both tabs, and let's send a message. Let's say hey. Now if I tap this, I can see that I send the message and I receive the same message in response. You can modify this response, by the way, if you go to your Xano instance and you are at triggers to your channel. So when you have a trigger, you can tell it that set this trigger to when you receive, for example, a message type of action. And when you receive that message type of action, do the following conversion and return this payload. So you can, for example, verify that that message contains information, or has maybe to use an LLM to check if it has profanity or something. I don't know. You can do different stuff. And then in here, if I open this channel, I can see that I received this, actually the message I sent. So if I open it, I can see that, hey, I received that message. History, process, that doesn't matter, but I can see who sent it. And here it is. This is the ID of the person that sent the message. And here's the message. And here's when it was sent. So let me reply. Hello. Let me send it. And here again, you can see that we send the message and with a different ID. And in response, you can see here, that I received the message as well. Hello, different ID, etc. But we want to see these messages here. Actually, we want to see these messages here, right? So let's configure that, because we are sending messages successfully. That's our first goal, but now our second goal is actually to start listening to those messages and do stuff with them. In this case, what we want to do is receive the message, convert it to our data type, which is the one we define in here, and then store it somewhere so we can show it in here. In this case, we have this list of processed messages. So we are going to add a listener that will catch these messages we're receiving, parse them to this data type, and store them in this list. So let's do that. The simplest way is to add a listener. And here I'm going to open this on-initialization event. And after I have set my random ID, I'm going to add another action, and this will be a custom action from our library called add WebSocket listener. And this has more parameters, but bear with me. The simple part is that we are going to set the connection hash, which is the one we received from the component, and we have to pass a listener key. This is important. The listener key is some sort of ID, but you can have one listener key per connection hash. So, for example, let's say that I want to set a listener with a key message, and I have two different connection hash or two different WebSocket connections using different connection hash. I will have the same ID for those two connection hash connections, and nothing will happen. But if I try to set another listener with the same message listener key, it will override the previous listener key. The previous listener with the same key and the same connection hash. So keep that in mind. You can have one listener key per connection. In this case, we're going to call it my chat, something like that. And then I'm going to set up some filters. Here you have the ability to set some filters to select which types of actions or real-time actions do you want to parse. For example, right now I'm not interested in any of these except from the message one. So I'm going to set the list entirely, and then I'm going to filter this list of items, and I'm going to add a condition that says if this item of the whole list of real-time actions is equal to message, confirm, return it. So basically this, what it does is that it's passing an array of real-time action enums with one value in it, and that value is the real-time action type of message. Okay, so we close off this, and well, if you wanted, you could also listen to events. You can add a condition and change this to or, and basically use the same logic, but instead of checking against the message, you can check for event. So that way you could listen to messages that other people is sending, but also that are being sent. Are being sent from the server or from the Xano instance. There's an action or a function specific you can use to send messages to your user through the server. Then we have the filter by channel. In this case, we want to select which channels do we want to listen to. In this case, we want to listen to one channel, which is the one we passed here in the components parameters. But this is expecting a listing of strings, so I'm going to use the code expression functionality. Then I'm going to pass the channel. Let me copy this, and then let me set this parameter as a string. So I select channel name. This is basically telling, hey, receive one parameter called channel, and this will be associated to the value of channel name of the component parameter. And then we are going to return a list of strings. That's cool. And then we are going to open array brackets to tell that I want to return a list, and I will pass a unique item to this array, which is the channel parameter I have up here. Then I will check for errors. I'm going to confirm. But if you wanted to post more channels, you can use this same technique and use them here, or have your own variable stored somewhere that you can pass to this filter by channel property. Then, or parameter, sorry. And then we have 3 different callbacks where we can take action when we listen to a message. And this is an interesting thing. You can listen to messages, or you can listen to the undone event when it's or WebSocket connection closes for some reason. It could be any reason, a manual reason, or because I manually closed the connection, or because we got an error from the server, or something happened, there was inactivity and the connection closed by itself, or we have an error. So these two, it will be rare that you use them in general. Maybe undone you will use more than on error, but even this one will be very few cases where you will want to use it. That being said, they are available for you, so you can add some callback function to when the connection closes and when it throws an error. Then on message, So this is the one we're more interested on, because this is when we receive a message that we can parse, and this is the one we want to use now. So let me open this, let me add an action. And what we want to do, if you remember, is that when we receive a message, we want to parse it and store it in this processed messages state of the component. So first we are going to set the function to update the page the component state. Update component states. Let me select the processed messages, and I'm going to add to the list the new message. And here I'm going to I will make the conversion. As you can see here, I have an action parameter which is called message, and this has the structure of this is receiving the Xano WebSocket message structure. So this is what I have to convert to this processed message data type, or message data type. And if I open this, you can see that there's nothing I can work with. What I want is retrieve this data information, which is the one we're receiving in here, and this is what I want to convert, but I can't access it because this is trying to look for the data type of message data. So how can we do this conversion? Well, in my opinion, the simplest way is to create a custom function. So let's go real quick to our custom functions. As here you can see, I have a function I created, and this function basically what it does is that it receives a string here. That is an argument you can define here. You receive a string. We check if the string is null. If it's null, then we just return message data structure with default values. In this case, maybe it would be better to return something nullable, but I'm just going to return something with empty values. And then if it's not null, we're going to take the string and convert it into a JSON data type or map, and then we're going to return this message data structure. We are going to return an object with a message data structure that is being mapped from the JSON map we created here. So this will do the work for us if we did everything okay, and with that I mean that we sent the message in the right format, and it is the same format that we have here in our message data type. Then we shouldn't encounter an issue. If your structure is more complicated, probably you will have to do some manual mapping rather than using a conversion like this. Maybe iterate over the fields or something, I don't know, and then map them manually. But this is good enough for me for now. And then, okay, so that's the custom function we're going to use to convert or parse our message. So let me open actually from this error here, and here I'm going to use that custom function message data. I'm going to pass it the data we're receiving from the message. Once again, that data corresponds to this data here, but it's received in a string format. So we're not receiving an object, we're receiving a string that can be parsed to JSON. And in return, by passing it to this JSON structure, we are going to convert it to, or we're going to parse it to our message data type. I'm going to confirm, and that's it. I'm adding it. And of course, we want to rebuild the current component, so the new message will be shown here. Now, something to keep in mind is that I connected this this state or component state to this list, but I added a sorting by the sent ads, and I set it to be descending. And also another property interesting here is that I made this list reverse, so it will start adding values from bottom to top. Cool, so that should do the trick. Let's go back to our test applications. Let's instant reload, and let's clear the logs on both sides. So we have a clear view of what is going on. Let's wait for a couple of seconds. And there you go. Let's connect. Let's wait for this one as well. Let's connect. And let's say private tenant, sorry. Copy this, join, and let's open the chat on both sides. Cool. Okay, so now when I send the message, hey, it should appear here as I send this message, because something I forgot to mention is that I have set a conditional here in the row that if the random ID of the message we're displaying here is equal to the random ID of the component state, then I will assume that message is mine, so I will show this. If it's different, then I will show this instead. So let's go back and let's say hey, and there you have. I didn't add this directly. Notice this, if we open this action, we're just sending the message and resetting the form. We're doing nothing else. So the reason it is showing here is because when I send the message, I receive the message in return, and I use that to pass it, to parse the message and show it in here. If I go to the other tab, we can see that we have the message, but it's identifying that someone else sent the message. So let's reply hello, and here's my message, and here's the message, and that's it. You have your connection established already, and now you are sending and listening to messages with just a few actions. I know that it looks like a lot, but once you get used to it, it's quite simple. Maybe one more thing we would like to add is the ability to disconnect from the tunnel. But that's something actually we're going to look into in the next video, because I will talk about states and things you should be aware of when adding listeners and closing components and stuff, because there are errors that could occur if you don't handle them well. So that will be the topic of the next video, how to remove listeners and close connections or leave channels. So yeah, that's it for now. See you in the next one.